Hey you guys, so making that last video showing the pulse, the chop and drop, the clearing in the space, it made me want to expand and talk a little bit more about this idea of pulse in a landscape. And I get really big into philosophy too, so I'm gonna go aside and then share a little bit. So the idea is that a landscape is a living system. It kind of goes with this nested nature of reality, that I am an individual, yet I'm made up of all these individual cells or parts of a whole, and that, that there's parts of a whole, but those wholes are parts of a greater whole, which are parts of a greater whole, and it basically continues both in the expansive but also to the internal. As we look smaller and smaller, we find that the organs are made up of the components, are made up of even the cells are made up of the different parts of the cell, are made up of the molecules, the atoms, all the way down. And we can only go as far as we can see, but the pattern itself is kind of leaning towards infinity. If we could see further, we would find the little parts of the quark and so on, and we would expand beyond our perspective of the universe as far as we can understand it. It's just a pattern. And so that's what I wanted to expand and talk about, is that a pulse is just a pattern. So it's, like we think of patterns as like on quilts and on paper, but no, pattern is just something that has some consistency, some repetition that we can see, but it also has a variability, and so we can see patterns in everything. And so the pulse of the landscape is really valuable to understand and to see, because every system is driven by the pulse. Like my heartbeat, my pulse, if I have a strong pulse, strong and consistent pulse, I'm a strong and healthy living system. And it's the exact same with landscapes. Maybe the pulse is the pulse of rain, or maybe the pulse is on an even broader time scale. Like the pulse of fire is so cool to think that the pulse of disturbance from herds of bison or from fire is what strengthened and shaped the Great Plains and that cool prairie ecosystem, which is really diverse and strong and valuable. And so when we think of a pulse, then we need to see that the value is not in any specific pulse, like I have to come in and do exactly this at exactly the right time, but rather to be consistent. And then we become a part of the system. We become a part of this greater whole, pulsing this living thing. So my pulse here may be like, the bi-yearly major clean out or whenever I have time, but it's been consistent. And that's driving this sort of foundation that, okay, we can grow from, we can expand from. The same with the fires. The fires came every dry season, and the plants, adapted and grew, and that system grew out of a consistent pulse. So right now, across much of America, the consistent pulse is mowing the lawn every week. And believe it or not, it's strengthening a lot of lawns. We're growing a lot of really great lawns out there. But by changing the pulse, by shifting the consciousness and then changing the pulse of the system, we change the entire system. The whole game changes. The whole expression, the externality, it changes. And so yeah, so those are my ideas. Think of pulses as everything, as the atoms that spin. Our heartbeat, is a pulse. Our lungs, our breath is a pulse. The rain is a pulse. The sun, rising and setting, and all of these pulses, they're not mechanical. They're not perfect. Every pulse has this consistency to it. But just as my heart rate can change, just as the sun drops in the sky and the time of day, it changes when it rises and sets. Every pattern, every pulse has this consistent aspect and this aspect of variability. And this is what I think connects it to another really great, it's the duality of existence, the yin and the yang, that the balance there. If you think about it, like a lot of great deep philosophical religious stuff is based on this balance between, in the essence of a pulse, which is the consistency, and the variability, the ability for it to change. So yeah, that was my philosophical ramble, and hope you enjoyed the video. Peace, and I'll catch y'all later.